What's going on, you loyal listeners? Thank you for tuning in to the L Squared podcast. I'm your host here, Luke Larson, and joining me today, as per the unusual, lovely and loquacious, my one thing. And I do this intro every show, and this is the one time I mess it up. And you know why? It's because I'm so excited to talk to you. So I have the writer and director of the new film Ringolevio, and it just so happens to be maybe my favorite film of the year. Writer-director Kristin Peterson. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And the word I was trying to say was loquacious, but I stumbled. But we'll see if we can get past it here. So Ringolevio is a movie that is, well, I'll let you describe it since it's your film, but can you kind of give us a synopsis of what Ringolevio is about?
Yeah, so I will say synopses are really hard when you spend like 3 years trying to figure out what a story is, but I'll try. Someone wrote a really nice one for me that I should probably just memorize. Anyway, there's this person named Ada who goes up north in Wisconsin, which like could be really any miles above Madison, which is not even close to like halfway point. Oh my God, see, I'm already really bad at the synopsis. Okay, Ada is a person who goes up north to meet her girlfriend's 3 older brothers over Easter weekend. And throughout this weekend, Ada realizes that she isn't fitting in with both this family of guys and her girlfriend. So it's kind of a breakup story, but it's open-ended at the end, I think. Yeah. I hope.
Yeah. I mean, it's there's a lot to unpack here. I'll say that our friend of the show, Josh Koopman, is in it, and he sent it to me, and I'm a huge Josh fan, one of my favorite people. And
he's the weirdest person. He's the most familiar person you'll ever meet.
Yeah. He really is. I've never had it where, like, the second I said hi to him, I was like, oh, like, it was just like stepbrothers. It was like, do we just become best friends?
That's how I felt. I also met him at a festival too.
Oh, really?
And just like overnight, he was an actor and a producer of one of the films that I programmed at the Blit International Film Festival, probably like 10 years at this point.
Wow.
And instantly, it was like, this guy is phenomenal. He's hilarious. He's friendly. He's smart. He can talk to anyone.
Yeah.
And then I don't even know how I thought of it, but like 7 years later, I was like, I think he'd be a great Ozzy. Emailed him, read the script. He read the script when there was murder in it. There's not murder in it.
Oh, wow.
Spoiler. And he gave really good notes, and he's like, I really want to play Ozzy. And I was like, I thought you'd be really great for this role. And he just killed it.
Wow. That's incredible. He does such a great job. And I texted him after I saw it too. And I told him that I loved it. And then I was like, you're such a good actor, man. Mm-hmm. And like I know him a little bit, but it was like, I forgot that it was him. And I'm not even just saying that, and it's such a perfect role for him.
Yeah.
But
it's just so strange because the movie I saw him in, The Golden Scallop, that he also produced, I think he helped write. I'm not sure about that. But that character is completely different. Like, he's a dope, like a dweeb kind of doofus person. And then there's like Mr. Mom Ozzy. Like, not like you would never know that they were the same actor other than his face.
Yep. The one that I saw him in first that brought this out to go to film festival was Put Your Feet Up. Which was short where he played a footstool. And the guy plays a great footstool.
He does.
He's got range for days.
Yeah, that was one of the most depressing, melancholic shorts I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
Which is also so different from everything else I've seen him in.
Very true. Yeah, and it just has like, I don't know, it's just got like this coldness that has stuck with me.
Yeah.
Ever since, but if I can try and find a segue here, what was it like to so when you wrote it, you said that you just kind of thought like at some point like Josh would be great for this. Did you have actors in mind for all the characters when you wrote this?
Um, I think at the beginning of the script, there are a few like dialogue moments I kind of based off of how one of my other actor friends speaks. But then like over time, that actor friend just like I had to transfer it to a whole different person. So I feel like maybe scaffolding wise,
Hmm,
just like helped me get to like a realness. I did base it off of people or people from my past, not actors.
sure.
But no, it wasn't until like we were okay, we should start casting or start looking to cast is when I started thinking of people. Um, and then because Josh had read one of the not first, but one of the better versions of the scripts, and he was interested, I was like, oh, okay, I could play with this. I can see how he is,
Hmm,
and in our conversations about the character. And then I started writing Ozzy a little bit closer to him.
sure.
I feel like the Ozzy that he made is so much more compassionate or charming than the Ozzy that I had in mind. But I
Hmm.
like him better. I like Ozzy so much better. I don't necessarily know if I like him, the character, but
Yeah.
yeah, he brought a level of like, oh, I can get why he is like this to the role, which I really
Yes.
appreciate.
Absolutely. Yeah, he does a great job of being that older brother character and like yeah, the charming nature of it where he taken the role to kind of hold this whole crazy thing together and try and not dwell on the the melancholy
Yeah,
aspect of their lives together, and kind of took it upon himself to build him up, and has sort of gotten into this like controlled chaos that works and then
yeah,
doesn't want it to not work, so
yeah.
yeah, you definitely understand it, but the dialogue is is so good, and it's so hard to write dialogue, and I just kept thinking like I was like, are these scenes like are some of these like improv? Because I just could not believe how well. I mean, and I thought like, did you? I was just curious. Did you have a lot of like rehearsal time before doing this? Because it all just felt so natural.
So absolutely no rehearsal time.
Really.
I would change that going back in time.
Mm,
But it was such a crammed schedule.
mm,
Not just a shooting schedule, but like we got greenlit probably 2 months before I had to start casting, and then we were shooting a month after that.
mm,
So no, not a lot of rehearsal at all. But there is a lot of improv. Um,
mm,
but then there are scenes that I would say between Ada and Marissa are completely scripted,
mm.
and we just cut the improv out because you just can't have a 20-minute long scene.
Sure.
For example, there's like a 10-minute, maybe 15-minute long radio scene that's all scripted,
Mm,
but it feels very naturalistic. Like these actors are incredible.
yeah.
Um, like I just every time I watch it, Meredith Johnson, who plays Marissa, she even like her ums that she puts in there, they were scripted, and she just pulls them off so, like so well. So yeah, there's a lot of improv. Um, I would say by the end of the shooting or near the last few days, they were getting into such a great rhythm, all of them. The scenes that we shot in the last week, those were mostly improv, like I would
Mm,
say. Some interjections.
wow.
Also, all of the actors, the key actors, are writers themselves. So that is like
Mm.
really incredible to work with.
Yeah, absolutely, and it comes off, and like toward the end, I had this thought too. I wrote down, I was like, this just feels like a theater troupe. It feels like a whole group that's worked together and is cohesive and really just comes across as a unit, and it's just it it was just beautifully done, and you can tell a lot of care went into it, and the collaboration was definitely there. But so what was the inspiration for this film?
Okay, there's like many little threads. There's when I was younger, I dated someone for like 4 years as a teenager, which is like too long to date someone when you're a teenager. But
They
he
should really have a limit on that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it should be like a buzzer that goes off after like 4 days. But his family was huge. He had 7 siblings, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, from different mothers, but still, they all lived in the same house at one point in time. And I just like was so fascinated by that. I have, really quiet 2 siblings, 2 parents in a small house kind of upbringing.
Yeah.
Like being thrust into that situation and like not having a lot of confidence as a 14, 15-year-old. And all of them are so loud and there's a lot of boys and they're like literally showing you their dicks and their butts like every minute. So that's like where a lot of the brothers came from, is this family. I also, in my early 20s or when I was 19, I dated another guy who had a huge family. They didn't show dicks or butts as much at all.
Preferable?
But I also, what?
Is that preferable?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think that when you're new, maybe you should not see your like boyfriend's brother's penis.
You got to work up to that. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a few years. So I think that just like the big question is like, what is it like to have so many siblings that you have this like code system and certain things are funny and certain people are welcomed in, like almost all of them had their best friend that came to dinner every night. Like what kind of person is allowed to be in the circle of trust or whatever? So that was a lot of where the tone or maybe the setting came from. But then I was thinking more about when I was in my younger 20s, how like lonesome I felt around these groups, and not just like in those families, but going to college for the first time and trying to find your people. I just never really felt like I fit in necessarily, or I was maybe like sometimes too loud, or in other groups I was really reticent and really quiet and it was really hard to get to know me. So that's where the character Ada comes from, is just like, well, how do I learn this code system and how do I make it authentic to me? Because I don't want to just learn the code and say it. I want it to go through the filter of my personhood. So yeah, I think that's the genesis. Another I guess practical thing is that I wanted to make a first feature and I knew that wasn't going to be very much funding. So it had to be set where we could afford it, and preferably in one location. There's more than one location, but it's basically one. And I could really only afford to have 5 characters, so I put limits on myself while I was writing because of that.
Sure.
Which is kind of, I think, why the first few drafts had murder in it. It's like, well, if I have to keep it cheap, can I at least make it really scary and visceral? Because it's cheap to get fake blood. So, but sure. I can't tell murder stories. Actually. I didn't actually want to tell that story.
Yeah, well, that's probably important. I could see, that's maybe an interesting question. Like, I could see Ozzy maybe not murdering someone, but definitely like helping cover it up.
Like, that's what he did.
Boom.
Yep.
We can make a sequel.
I wonder if I should go back and read the draft that Josh first read and be like, how bad was it? It was really bad, so I don't actually want to read it. I know it was bad, but he was very gentle about it.
Yeah. It's interesting you bring this up because this kept popping up to me, and when we were talking before, I remember saying, well, I said right after I got done watching it, I said to myself, like, this is like a horror movie for my anxiety. Is this what it felt like being an introvert and a feeler, and and I'm an Enneagram type 2. I don't know if you're familiar with the Enneagram.
Very familiar.
Yeah. So like just wanting to, it was a lot to handle, and And I was talking with you, and you said that people are saying that it's a horror movie, for introverts, and
Mhm.
I related to it so hard, almost too hard, and being a two, I struggle with like boundaries,
Mhm.
and setting up boundaries and having those boundaries, and in this whole thing is like there are no boundaries, and you're trying to fit in, so you're trying not to have, put up those boundaries. And it's interesting when you talk about being in, your early 20s and not really knowing where you fit in and trying to, and I relate to that hard. And this whole time I just was like, I wrote a lot of notes, but it was just like, no boundaries, all talk, why, all caps, why no boundaries, and then all caps, like, just talk about shit, please, just, can we just sit down and everybody just say what we're feeling, and we can
Mhm.
figure it out, and we can all respect how each other are feeling, but I'm just going on a tear here, but those.
I feel that hard. I think putting the words "no boundaries" around what the film is doing actually is something that I haven't done yet. Like, pick those words, because uh, do I want to talk about this in public? Probably. I don't care. I don't care about anything. Like, I have severely codependent tendencies,
Mhm.
and the no boundaries thing is humongous. And I think Ada, when I was 20, and Ada, like, and although Ada's supposed to be like 25 or 26, she's more involved in the genesis of the story.
Sure.
Um, I always thought you had to have everyone accept you, or you had to be accepted by everyone, otherwise you're doing something wrong.
Hmm.
Where I skipped the step was like, do I even want them to like me, or do I even want to be here?
Right.
And I feel like she's skipping that step. There's also a moment where, like, Ozzy goes into the bathroom with her when she's going to pee.
Yeah.
Like, literally, that is the one moment she could have said, "Wait, what's up?" But she
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's like, I didn't learn how to say "what's up," please don't do this, until like way too late. So late in
Right.
the game.
It's hard, and it's like, y- that's a great scene too, and it's just, he's like, oh, I don't mind. Like, what? Okay, well, but what if I do? Like, this is
Yeah.
kind
I'm
of weird.
glad you don't mind.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Ozzy. I was worried there for a second, but and then his whole kind of monologue to her is like, we had to, we Marissa's tough because we forced her to be, and like almost saying like, because we don't have boundaries, that's why she's like this strong, independent person, and that's why it's like good, and she's kind of like fading in and out and leaves, but
Yeah.
it's tough, and I could see I don't know, it's hard to say now because like I went through a period like that too, and I think it's just something, it's like I've have had issues in the past with codependency, and I probably still do, but it's good to be aware of them, and that's really the first step, and then you can kind of recognize it and work on it, and
Yeah,
kind of.
it's never cured.
Right. It's just like all those moments like that, I could totally see like something weird like that happening, and me just being like, I could see maybe a scenario where it'd be like, okay, well, this is kind of weird, but I'll just go with it because then they'll think I'm also weird and quirky, and then they'll accept me,
Yeah. Or like, I'll let this happen, but I will just maybe try to avoid them in the future. Like, that's
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
passivity around it. People have been saying it's also, this movie is painfully Midwestern. It's like, I think that's not necessarily a fair thing to say. It's true. I think a lot of Midwestern families have the problem of saying what they do and do not allow
Mm.
personally or as a family, and
Yeah.
um, but it's codependency. Generally, it's not just Midwestern. It's not knowing that you're allowed to tell someone no.
Mm. Yeah.
So then you get so far in that you're like, oh shit, this is trauma at this point. But
Yeah.
you could have kept yourself from trauma.
Yeah, you could have avoided it, because I just think of like my I'm very, I don't know if you can tell, I'm also very Midwestern, and still am. And my my mom is the sweetest person in the world, very nice, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And her thing is like, I still carry this through, but she always said to me, you know, she's like, Luke, you don't have to like everybody, but you can't be mean to them. You know, that was
It's
she
true.
just the number one thing was like, you can't be mean to people. And it was just you know, we all have interesting family, you know, dynamics. And um I think my dad has some narcissistic tendencies, and my mom struggled with codependency. So it's sort of like this rough thing, but it was just a lot of like things were happening and we just didn't talk about it, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and everything was just so passive. And it's like eventually it all came to a head and burst through it, which was, you know, when my parents got divorced, it was just like, looking back, it's like that was the best thing that could have happened, I think, for everybody. And it was just sort of this, I bring it up sometimes, but I think of kind of my life as like pre and post that happening. I was like 17. It was in the middle of my senior year of high school, so just a lot of transitions were happening.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't play football that year because I had re-hurt my knee, and that was a tough decision. And then like I had to put my dog down that I got in first grade, and then,
Oh.
you know, and then my parents are getting divorced. Oh, and I'm gonna graduate from high school. I don't know what I'm gonna do with my life, you know. So there's just a lot of things happening in a short amount of time. And when that happened, it was kind of like put things into perspective, and it took a couple years to obviously to work through it. But since that, it's a lot more of like just like I just want to deal with shit just like right away. Like when something happens, like let's just talk about it and deal with it. Like the last thing I want to do is just put it off and just let it fester, you know. And I think about there's just so much good symbolism in this film, and just right away when Marissa hurts her leg and they don't take her to the hospital. You know, they
Mm-hmm.
don't take her to go get it taken care of to make sure it heals right. They're like, no, we'll just, you know, we'll throw some whiskey on it and patch you
Yeah.
up and it'll be fine. And it's just like, and it kept bothering her, and it's just letting it fester. And I was like, that's just
Mm-hmm.
such a beautiful symbol for everything of like, no, just deal with it. It'll probably be painful in the moment, but then you can allow it to heal.
Yeah. And then by the end of the movie, she becomes resentful and angry, which
Yeah.
is like historically what codependent people and myself have resorted to, because we didn't know that, you know, at the first act we can say, no, I need to go to the hospital. We have to wait until the third act to like get really angry at someone, and it has to be someone else's problem
Right.
before we can take care of ourselves. Like, well, yeah, I feel like I spend a lot of time caring about Marissa. I care about Ada a lot, but Ada's me, and Marissa's me, and Ozzy's me. Actually, all of them are me. But like Marissa is the maybe external of what it is to be like when you're going with the flow, especially in hypermasculine areas, like
Mm,
groups. You
yeah.
just like, you have to go with it. You can't be the bitch. You can't be the whiner. You can't be the like all these terrible words that you're not called ever, but other women are called in front of you, and you're told not to be that. So she's the external kind of reaction to that, where Ada, you can see on her face all the time that she's like, she's not okay with what's happening. She's
Hmm.
still not saying anything, but it is more of the internal of like, well, what can I do?
Yeah. I mean, one of the most passive aggressive things was when they're driving and Marissa's like, oh yeah, this is where Ozzy and whatever they were jumping off this thing, or oh yeah, this is where they broke, and then she just turns up the radio because doesn't
Mm-hmm.
want to hear more about it. And that was like a shot to my heart. Oh, because like that, I mean, that was what I grew up with, was just so much passive
Yeah.
aggressive, you know, and you would just see that, and it was just like, ugh. And I was like, wow, I have some. some trauma that I didn't realize watching.
That's interesting. You should say that. I think I've talked to actually a few other writer friends of mine who read the script before it was finished. They're like, I wrote that into something. I wrote that into something. It's like,
Wow.
is this what Midwestern family members do to other Midwestern family
I guess
members or
so.
whatever?
And it's just so like, it's so frustrating, especially now of like, you know, it would just be better if you would just say like, instead of just being pissy and just turning the radio up and not, you know, talking about what was bothering you, why not just say like, okay, like it's frustrating to me that you are, you know, or whatever, you don't have to put a value judgment on it, but you can just say like, well, I don't really care about what your brothers did. I want to know more about you. I'm not here for you know, or just like just talk
Yeah.
and just say what you're feeling. And I feel
Yeah.
like, you know, there's some families, it's not as many in the Midwest, I guess, but I've been around other families, like especially from different kind of cultures, that will just call you out on that stuff and be like, whoa, why'd you turn the radio? Oh, you're mad, you know, and they just deal with
Yeah.
it. And you're like, yeah, why can't we just do that instead of like I have to be pouring mustard on my burger later and be like,
Mhm.
and we still don't even talk about it. We just
Mhm.
try and forget that it ever happened.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back 10 steps, everything could have been, the whole relationship could have been
Yeah.
fixed. If Ada was like, hey, can I just have 10 minutes of silence? I need to like process something. Now that I'm like out of my 20s, I've been learning to just say that. And like, it's nice to have, you know, a partner who encourages it too
Mm-hmm.
constantly. But like, you can have alone time while being in the same space. But as a codependent, I didn't know that
Mm-hmm.
until someone like walked me through the language of like, hey, can we just have 10 minutes of silence and listen to the music and like we can talk when we get to the restaurant? But these two
Mm-hmm.
people don't know how to say that to each other.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, I was um the most recent relationship I was in wasn't wasn't that great, you know, from the start, but I was it was definitely like one of the main things that kept happening was like something would come up and I would just want to deal with it, and she just wouldn't, like, nope, we're just not going to deal with it, and it just kept piling up. And you know, I mean, there was plenty of other stuff too, but, and, you know, it just got to the point where it's like, all right, I'm done, which I don't like. I'm glad that, especially now, it's like, okay, I don't have to deal with this, you know, like,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe, I don't know. It's interesting because like the whole time I was thinking like, just leave, you know, you're an adult, you have a car, you can just
Yeah.
leave, you know, just go to, you know, to a safe space and leave the relationship. That would be my advice. Just get out. It's not good. You're not happy. She's not happy. It's like this is a weird thing, and just go.
Who do you perceive as having the worst time in the relationship?
Oh man, yeah. You know, I think you would probably be interesting to ask them, because I think Ada, I would think, doesn't want to believe that she's having a bad time. So would probably say that it's good and try to focus on the positives and not think about the bads. Whereas like I just don't even know how to approach it with Marissa, because Marissa seems like she's definitely not over her ex. I mean,
Or any of her
or
exes?
any of her exes, yeah. I mean, that becomes apparent. So it's like this seems like to Marissa, maybe this is just Ada's like just safe and easy, you know, and doesn't challenge her, and you know, Marissa can just basically do whatever, and so she likes that aspect of it, but probably without realizing it, I would guess takes Ada for granted and doesn't really appreciate all the things Ada does, because Marissa's not really getting gratification out of it, because it's not like fully realized, you know, and but I don't know. Maybe I should ask you that.
I mean, I don't know either. I think that the characters are just as complex as people that I know. And like any given day, these characters have no idea what they're feeling. But your answer is like, oh, Marissa sounds like the villain, which like is really interesting because a lot of people who have dated Marissas in their lives tend to think she's the villain, where you have dated an Ada in your life, you think she's the villain.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's pretty even. Like, I also think that I'm talking like I didn't write these people, but I think that Marissa brought Ada to her brother's, house, knowing as a self-sabotage or a sabotage, not for the self, knowing that Ada wasn't going to work with them, so that she would have an excuse or she would make this explode. But then she's the one who has the wound. She's the one who got hurt. And then I also then I start thinking, well, do you think she willed this wound into existence because she needed like a physical manifestation of like how she doesn't feel right? So all these things, like I don't know. I just don't. I equally think that they never should have gotten together to begin with, and they could make it work if they talk about it. Figure it out.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Like if this is their point of crisis in their relationship, and they actually talk about it in a healthy way, and they own what is theirs, and the other person owns what's theirs.
Yeah.
I think they can have a really healthy relationship, because I agree with you. I think that Marissa sees Ada as like this stable figure, someone who has a passion for bugs, and like, she just seems like she has some of her life together, even in her mid-20s. So I think that's interesting for Marissa, who we find out did not have a stable life at all for probably more than 2 years at a time. But then I forgot where I started the sentence. So Ada's point of view is like, well, Ada seems a little bit too kind of like sure of what she likes. And Marissa is just like a little bit of a chaos agent to excite her and open up her mind and maybe bring her out into the world a little bit more.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. I mean, I guess my answer gave away which way I'm leaning, but it's tough when I guess it's just harder for me to relate to Marissa. I'm just so much more of an Ada, but I do have empathy for it. But it's also like you just have to, this was a phrase that I started saying, which helped me, I guess, which I didn't really realize was like helping me with boundaries at the time. But it was just like, if you don't respect yourself, other people aren't going to respect you, like you have to have that respect for yourself first, and then people will respect you. I think of my friend Tyler. He won't mind that I say his name. He's a popcorn farmer. One of my oldest friends and one of my best friends.
So he's a popcorn farmer?
Yeah, that's actually that was the impetus of this podcast, was my co-host and I met working on his popcorn farm.
Cool.
And he's a childhood friend of mine, and we're still close, and he's a great guy, but he just does not have a problem. Like anytime I would like ask him to hang out or something, he just doesn't have a problem with just cutting the fat and just saying like, no, I don't really feel like doing anything. Or like, we just want to stay home tonight. Or like, just doesn't beat around the bush. And at first it was kind of annoying because it was like, well, okay, you just want to stay at home and do nothing? Like, let's go do something, but he's just like, was like, no, I don't feel like it, And the more that time went on, I was like, you know what? I really appreciate that, because there's nothing worse than just like asking somebody to do something and they're like, oh yeah, we should. No, it sounds fun. Let's do it. And then you're getting ready and you're all excited. You're planning stuff out, and then you're getting ready to go. And then they're like, oh, we're getting ready. And you're like, okay, cool. you go to do it, and then they're like, hey, you're gonna hate me, but I'm not gonna and they make up some excuse. And it's just like over time, it's like I want to be, wanted to be more like that. And it's kind of like that with boundaries. It's like you have to set up your own boundaries and respect them first before, like, and then you can respect other people's boundaries easier too.
Yeah.
And a way to learning to love yourself and know the love and respect that you deserve, and then you can receive it. But you probably couldn't before that because you didn't really know. Like in my case, waiting for someone to, because I suffer from the I just think that if this was before I knew about the Enneagram and knew I was a 2. I was like, I think I have like a savior complex, where it's like I can just come in and like I'll just be a good guy. Like I'm just a good guy and I'm nice and I can just be that, and then that'll just fix everybody's problems. That'll be great and nothing else matters. I can just do that. And then all of a sudden you're just in these horrible situations and you're all caught up and you're worrying about other things that have nothing to do with you, and you're just you've lost yourself, all of a sudden. And it's just,
and you trying to be so nice and so giving ultimately turns you into the bad guy.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't want to get into this, but the triangle, the triangle of disempowerment blew my mind. So there's the victim, there's the savior, and then there's the perpetrator. At any given point, you are one of them. If you're on the triangle, it's an unhealthy system. So you perceive a friend or someone as the victim. So you want to be their savior. But if they don't want you to save them, or they're not thanking you enough for saving them the way that you are saving them, you turn into the perpetrator and you make them feel bad for not thanking you at the level you want to be thanked for saving them. And then you turn yourself into the victim because you feel hurt or victimized by their lack of appreciation, or you're telling them to do something and they ultimately don't do what will help them. Anyway, blew my mind when I learned about that like 2 years ago. But then, okay, I wanted to bring up, yeah, you could have boundaries and you can respect them for yourself, and then other people have to respect them because you're keeping them. But the first step is before that is self-knowledge, which I think was my biggest thing. Is like, why do I feel so bad around this person? Or why don't I want to go to that party? Like I couldn't even figure out why I didn't want to do something or why I felt like I needed a boundary. So doing the self-examination was like, oh, that person makes me feel this way because they're asking me to do something I don't want to do. Okay, I don't want to do that. I should tell them I don't want to do that. Like, that blew my mind too. It's like, oh yeah, I can have boundaries and keep them, but I need to know why I'm feeling poorly before I can create the right boundary.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All these things.
All these things and
okay,
more.
if an Enneagram, do you want to like guess what the Enneagram is for Marissa or Ada?
Oh boy, yeah. Okay. I'm trying to take my own bias out of it. Marissa, I would guess. Boy, that's tough. I feel like Marissa's. Is she a 3?
That's interesting.
Maybe.
She's a musician, and usually musicians like to have their work appreciated and listened to.
Yeah.
I don't think she's at all a 2.
No, definitely not. I wouldn't. That's a good question, because one is like a perfectionist, right? She's. I could say she's an 8, but I don't. She's probably not really an 8. That's just me.
I mean, I think that she's a 7-wing 8.
You think so?
Yeah. But also, I'm a 7.
Oh, well, okay.
And I thought I was a 2.
Yeah.
It's a weird mistype.
Because 8 is like conflict. Like
The boss.
the boss, yeah.
They
There's,
forge through things.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what's a 7 again?
The 7 is they avoid pain by overloading their brain and life with pleasure.
Mm.
And that could mean a number of things, but it mostly looks like they are opportunistic. They are looking for flashing lights, opportunities, movies,
Mm.
friends, bouncing around all the time, and they have a hard time like sitting with the hard feelings.
Mm.
So I feel like that's what she is with the wing 8, because she is pretty bold.
Mm.
But I think you bringing up 3 is interesting. Maybe this is too much into the listeners who like don't know about Enneagram.
We've lost them. Shoot. Well, I don't know. Like, I feel like just being she's kind of a go-getter, and a 3 would probably have their life together a little bit more than Marissa does, probably. But that's it. That's maybe a podcast for another day. But I'm gonna think about
reviews, but it's Enneagram.
I would be all about it. Look out, loyal listeners. That's the new phase of this. So speaking of her being a musician, I love that they ran a radio station. And I'm not sure if this is what you were going for, but this is what I took from it, was that radio, especially like morning radio, shock jock, is like a place that I don't want to be. It's not something I really care to listen to, but especially would not want to be in that studio. I would probably be a lot more comfortable on NPR myself. But I thought it really rang true for me of this, because when I think of morning radio, I think of like Howard Stern and just the crazy shit that he's done, bringing a whatever, a pornographer to moan into the mics, or like, they're like throwing food everywhere. They have like milk gallon chugging contests to see who pukes first. Like, I don't know. I mean, you could tell I don't actually listen to morning radio, but that's like, that's just what
my impression.
Yeah. Maybe I'm making all this up. They're like throwing pancakes against the wall, but that's like what I see it as. And it was just sort of like, I was like, that's such a great encapsulation of their family dynamic of like, it's fun, it's entertaining. We're doing a bunch of crazy stuff just to keep the ball in the air, to keep moving, so that the people in their cars aren't thinking about their boring, mundane lives while they're driving to work. They can be like, oh, listen to all this wacky stuff they're doing, which is at their family dynamic at home, is like, we got to keep the ball in the air. We got to keep doing all this weird stuff. We got to throw wet towels on you while you're sleeping. And it's just so that we don't sit with the reality that, our parents aren't here, or that,
And the I don't know, dozens of people who were supposed to take care of them over their lives, like, failed on top of their parents failing. Yeah. Grappling with shared trauma is, like, I'm assuming, like, multitudes harder than grappling with your own, because you have to answer to what other people remember. Yeah, that's a really great take on that, especially that Ozzy, the mother figure basically of these wayward kids, siblings, him, even in his like career, is doing what he does emotionally in his life. So keep it light, keep it entertaining. And when he asked Marissa about her music, which he think is gonna be a fun topic, she gets a little lower than he's like comfortable with. And he just like, he immediately changes the subject to talk about, I think it's like the oldest Irish pub. And he doesn't actually say the whole line. If you care, there's I think it's like whatever. It's like 800-year-old slice of chocolate cake you can buy from this place. Anyway, it's real. It was a real story that we just plucked. I think like the 10th day of shooting, we had to rewrite the radio scene to make sense with some improv. So that's what we plucked out of the internet.
That's awesome. Would you eat an 800-year-old piece of cake?
Maybe that's not it. No, we shot this like basically a year ago, and I can't remember anything. Actually, the person who plays Marissa, Meredith Johnson, she gave me a great phrase, which is production amnesia. Like after production, you basically forget who was fighting with whom, how little food you had, how much sleep you had. Like you just forget everything.
Yeah.
You just have the footage.
Yeah, you just remember the good times, or if they're really bad times. You know, that just made me think. This has nothing to do with anything, but I believe that there's this like 1,200-year-old stick of butter in Ireland that was preserved because it was thrown into a bog.
Oh.
So they still have it there in the bog, and it's just like this big mound. And that's how they used to preserve food before they had like ice and salt and stuff. They would just throw stuff in a bog, like wrap whatever around it, throw it in a bog, and then it would just like keep there, and they would go fish it out or whatever. And so there's this really old stick of butter that it's like a tourist thing. You can go and like take a butter knife and take some of the butter and eat it. So
I'm looking that up right after this.
Call me out on it. I don't know what I would do it though. I would risk getting sick or dying from that, because that's just a fun story, you know.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. And Ringolevio is a fun story. There we go. There's a segue.
The segue. We say at the same time.
Yeah. That's how you know. You should be the co-host of this. You fit right in. We do that all the time. Most of it is just saying at the same time.
I don't think that I'll ever have the energy to be a podcast co-host, ever. The commitment it takes to do that is astounding. And I think I could do 2 episodes and then I would just like fake my own death because I couldn't handle it.
Not even a co-host. Well,
yeah.
Old Legs and I bicker all the time about how I do everything he doesn't do. You know what's the best thing is to be a guest on a podcast. That is the best.
I'm enjoying it.
Good. Well, I hope so. Yeah. Could you just repeat that back to me?
I'm enjoying being a guest on your podcast.
Can you say L Squared podcast?
L Squared.
Thank you. That's going to be the whole episode. I'm just going to cut that audio out and just loop it all the time.
Our loyal listeners are going to love it.
They will. They don't have a choice. But Ringolevio is playing right now at the Milwaukee Film Festival, right?
It's digital, so saying it opens is a little strange, but it opens on October 16th. And it goes until, I don't know, the 30th. So they're doing this, digital screenings. You can watch it at any time in this 2-week window. Where it premiered at Dances with Films in LA, you had to show up at a specific time, and like if you were 10 minutes late, you missed the first 10 minutes. So 2 different ways to do a digital film festival.
Yeah. Well, loyal listeners, again, you don't have a choice. Go out, find Ringolevio and see it. It's a beautiful film and maybe my favorite of the year, and it touched me deeply and probably deeper than I wanted it to. Maybe deal with a lot of stuff. So please go out and see it. And if they don't catch it at the festival, is there a way that they can follow you and follow the film?
Yeah, we're on Instagram at Ringolevio Film. Ringolevio is spelled R-I-N-G-O, like Ringo, the best Beatle, and then Levio, like, I actually don't know a word, that's L-E-V-I-O. And then it's on Facebook, Ringolevio Film. And then there's a website, but yeah, follow us, watch the movie. I'm getting from this interview that I should probably send it to a Codependence Anonymous group. That's everyone who has codependency or anxiety or introvert. anxiety has been responding to it. So pass it around if you want a really good 80 minutes of feeling awkward and tense.
That's fantastic. Yeah, we'll have to find all those groups. Just have like a group festival to watch it all together. And we can all heal as one.
Yeah. Healing.
That's what it's all about. Well,
shared torture and then shared healing.
Yeah, well, let's try not to manipulate that one to get together. But loyal listeners, as always, you can find me on Twitter at LukeLarson89. Find this podcast at L Squared Podcast on Twitter, on Instagram, or on Facebook at L2 Podcast. Check us out. Let us know what you thought of Ringolevio. And until next time.